You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman. Tonight we have a special meeting of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency. It is February 17th, 2022. It is 7:02 by my clock. This meeting is being conducted in a Zoom format in accordance with Public Act 21-2. Please identify yourself when you speak by announcing your name before you speak. Those that are not speaking, please mute. And I hope that we can move this meeting along. It's easy to get in this subject caught in the weeds. And Lord knows that Jamie's been at this a while and is beating the weeds pretty good. So I'm going to rely a lot on her to guide us this evening with her wisdom and experience. Also, it was incumbent upon her to pick apart the comments by Eric and myself when we were in the subcommittee and make those useful. So I appreciate the effort that she went through within the subcommittee in doing all that work and in the preparation of tonight's meeting materials, which are in the Dropbox for our review. I'll take a roll call right now. Peter Basserman here. Please announce yourself.
Clarice Begemon. Oh.
Clarice Begemon.
Clarice Begemon present.
Suzanne Boda.
Commissioner Boda present.
Commissioner Finaro.
Commissioner Finaro present.
And I thought we, there we are. Commissioner Steinberg. Welcome. Just say here.
Thank you.
You're here. Okay, good. I thought we had Melissa
She's expected. She's not on the call yet.
Okay, well, I think we're good to go at this point.
I'll let you know if she joins.
Thank you. Before we get into the regulations itself, Jamie is going to kind of guide us through what the process is. It'll, I think, be helpful for a review of those of us that have been around for a bit and as for a new commissioner to understand what the process is likely to be. So, Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, Jamie Frederick, and the Wetland Agent. I'll start off by stating that Melissa Papatonis has joined the meeting. As such, based on the number of commissioners she's seated. So generally the process with the regulation revisions is that the commission, if they are proposing a revision to their own regulations, they need to send that language to DEEP 35 days prior to having a public hearing. It also needs to get posted in the town clerk's office at least 10 days prior to the public hearing, and 2 notices have to get placed in the paper regarding the public hearing. So what we're doing right now is we're looking at some of the language the commission might want to propose, getting that put together so that we can send it to the state and go about the public hearing process. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or want more of an overview on that process at this time?
Nope.
This is Commissioner Basserman. There is a timeline in the Dropbox regarding the amendments if you want to review that subsequent to the meeting. Next up, in the package of material is kind of a review of what the subcommittee went through over the period of time in which it was formed, and some of the findings that the subcommittee identified. We're going to be reviewing that in the larger context of the material that Jamie has prepared for us. And maybe she and I had talked prior to the call about whether we wanted to start right from the beginning or whether we wanted to start with the fees. My concern is that usually when we start at the beginning and by the time we get to the fees, we're tired. And so we don't give the fees justice. So if anybody has a different feeling, I'm more than willing to listen to a different argument, but I thought we'd start with the fees this evening. How's that sound? That's okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that's fine. I'm just wondering, is the intention that we get through all of the regulation proposed or the items in track changes discussion, is the hope that we get through everything tonight, or are we anticipating having a cutoff time? So that I think, I guess the reason, and based on what Chairman Basserman just said, I think that there does get to be a point where it's easy to start to lose track of some of the details and the rationale. And when we're working on our regulations, it's important to be very clear-headed. So I'm wondering if it would make sense to have a cutoff time. Even doing this kind of work for 3 hours, I'm not sure that we would come out with this.
I'm certainly amenable, Commissioner Basserman. I'm certainly amenable to a time frame limit. I'm not sure that. Let me ask this, Jamie: is there a time frame requirement or benchmark that we need to meet here, or if it were to go to another special meeting, are we okay with that?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I expect it to go to another meeting, especially since I was not able to draft up the language for bonds for consideration this evening. So I think my recommendation would be for the commissioners to keep in mind what Commissioner Boda just said. And as we go through, we get to a point, rather than putting a time, see what actually gets to the point of exhaustion for everybody, and they can mention it. And we can assess it at that point and try and wrap up what the discussion is, or not go on to the next section.
Yeah, why don't we take a time check at 9 o'clock and see how everyone's feeling?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank you. And then I just, again, Commissioner Boda, now having been through regulation revisions a number of times, I would like to offer just a little bit of perspective as we start to talk about these items. I think that sometimes when we look at our regulations, it feels like the language is vague. And in the past, that has been intentional in a way, and with guidance from some of the legal updates that we've had. And the reason why that occurs is because the more specific and narrow we make our language, the harder it gets for us to be thoughtful about the kind of decisions in the spirit of the state regulations, and to account for nuances that we cannot predict are going to occur when we have to hold up an application or a violation or a cease and correct or whatever the issue is. If we make our regulations too specific and too sometimes locked into arbitrary numbers, that can be very difficult for us to actually implement in practice. And it also can, depending on where the numbers are coming from, open us up to challenge if we've just made up a number that's not based in state guidelines, whether it's from DEEP or the Stormwater Manual or from court cases or anything like that. So it's just really important to keep in mind that there is a value in some ambiguity.
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Nation. I'll just follow up on that real quick. And rather than going around in circles on some things, if there's something the commission wants more information on, let me know. Either staff from the department can review it, or the commission wants town council guidance on something, then we can take notes on that, up on it for the next time we discuss this. All right.
Okay.
Any comments, or should I screen share?
Please.
Of course, I'm all right, so can everyone see section 19 of the regulations? All right, so I'll just kind of through them, and if any of the commissioners have any questions or comments or concerns, then let me know. So the first one is methods of payment. All we did there was add check, because currently it says certified check or cash, and currently we have a practice of accepting checks. So just making that clarification in the regulations. 19.2, no application shall be reviewed by the application or its duly authorized agent unless the correct application fee is paid in full, or unless a waiver, delayed payment fee schedule, or reduction has been granted. I'm not familiar in the 7 years that I've been working in the town of a time that the commission's done a delayed payment schedule. I don't really know how they would set that up. So thought is to remove it. 19.3 simply said the application fee is not refundable. There have been some instances where the commission has granted a fee refund. And so this is kind of spelling out that if the applicant decides within 14 days of submitting their application that they can get a refund. However, the deep fee is not refundable, which is the fee that's required by the state for the application. And then if the commission determines that a permit is not required for a project, because sometimes I'll suggest that somebody submit an application if I'm not sure, so that they're not held up, that they would get a full refund because the commission determined they didn't have jurisdiction. 19.4a, commercial uses means activities carried out on property developed for industry, commerce, trade, recreation, or business, or being developed to be occupied for such purposes. That's just changing to align the language with the 2006 model regulations that were put out by the state. 19.4b, this is one we might want to pause and talk about. This is de minimis. De minimis means a minimal impact activity that is minor in nature as determined by the agency or its duly authorized agent. In all cases, the character of the land and the potential impact to wetland/watercourse shall be considered when determining what proposed regulated activity qualifies as de minimis. The commission may develop a guidance document as to types of projects that could be considered de minimis. So in the past, the commission has had a fee type called de minimis, where the fee application is $25 and it's for minor projects that aren't likely to have much of an impact to wetlands or watercourses, such as like a shed or a deck of some distance from the wetland. So I don't think in the past we've had a definition of de minimis, but I thought it would be a good idea to add one. I'm not sure if this last sentence is something the commission would want to keep in there, unless they think you actually would want to develop a guidance document. Any?
This is Commissioner Basserman. I could add something to that last sentence. We spent, I would say, more than a nominal amount of time trying to pick together projects, sheds, etc., that would allow for a non-commission review and approval. And it was tough to come up with a list of projects and criteria that didn't violate the concern that Commissioner Boda expressed, which is in some cases, when you are specific, it hurts you in ways that you hadn't anticipated. So my take, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, is that this last sentence was trying to keep the concept alive, but not spending the time right now to develop those criteria, and that might be worthwhile, going forward in the future. But we didn't want to hold up the process currently.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the commission could always later decide that they want to create a guidance document. That doesn't have to be in the regulations for you to do that. But I think that statement in there implies that it's something that you're striving to do. The subcommittee did bring this general type of question to the full commission. It looks like it might have been back in May. And I kind of got the impression that the commission was maybe not looking to do that type of document for the reasons that you can't spell out every scenario that would apply or every nuance for why something wouldn't apply that would on the surface seem like it might apply. So
this is, yeah, sorry. So this is Commissioner Boda. I don't think that we need that last phrase, because if we do it, we're going to do it. If we don't do it, we're not going to, it won't happen. And, it's only a sentence, but I think any extraneous that isn't actually actionable or a definition that we can just leave off. And I think the definition is fine. I'm not 100% sure we need it. And simply because like when a word is not included in our definitions, it defaults to the like Webster definition, and for a legal definition for I just quickly like looked up Cornell. It's like something trifling or of little importance or severity, that the law will not consider it. And so I think, it's fine to put it in. I think, it's not a disaster to not have it.
Yep. This is Commissioner Papantonis. Just to add to that, I guess, de minimis it's a legal term. Black's Law Dictionary defines it. And I don't think that we should lock ourselves into a definition other than that's generally used. So I don't think we need it.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think the most important part is as determined by the agency or its duly authorized agent. But when we put that, the de minimis fee in the fee schedule, it specifies that. So if the commission would like to strike it from the definitions, then I suppose I don't see any issue with doing that.
So Commissioner Boda, so clarify for me, the intention is because it is a category in the fee schedule, the assertion then is that the reason why we have it is just to specify that de minimis is the only way that something can be categorized as de minimis is by the agency or a duly authorized agent. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
That was the main intent.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's sort of like saying it's not self-determining. Someone can't walk in and say,
I'm de minimis.
This is de minimis. What this does is say, well, we're the only people who get to say it's de minimis.
Yeah. Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. And then in the definition, it just kind of tries to give a little bit of context as how the agency and or its duly authorized agent makes it the decision. But it wasn't in the regs before, so I don't think there's a need for it if the commission wants to just, I'll scroll down real quick and jump to maybe. So this is where it's in our fee schedule, de minimis minimal impact activity fee as determined by the agency or its duly authorized agent.
Commissioner Boda, I think you can even just do just the first sentence. Just clarifying that it's determined by the agency or its authorized agent.
For the definition?
Back to 19?
Yeah, 19.4B. Yeah. Sorry, you moved. I was still on it. Didn't go that fast.
Okay. All right.
See what I mean?
The first sentence for
And that leaves it open to determination, which is the right thing to do, I think.
Okay. Any commissioners have any additional questions or comments?
This is Commissioner Bassam. I think that was a good discussion. Moving right along.
Now I'm going to have
Great.
the Muppets on my head all night. Thank you for that.
So the next change is to remove the definition of multifamily residential development because it's not really being used in the revised fee structure. And it wasn't in the model regs that the state puts out. So I didn't really see a need to keep it. And then other uses and residential uses is again, changing the language to match the 2006 model regs put out by the state. And then G and H are both new. I don't know if the commission wants both or one or the other. So currently the commission assesses the fee for the application based off of the total area of disturbance on the site. And sometimes that can be a little bit confusing for the applicant. So putting a definition in the regulations, I think wouldn't be a bad idea. But the question also came up during the subcommittee discussions as to whether the fee should be based off of the total area of disturbance or the upland review area of disturbance, which is why I have this area highlighted in yellow, because the commission should discuss and kind of decide if they want one or both. And if you want, we can table this until we take a look at the fees that are proposed.
Commissioner Papantonis, that might be a good idea.
Does everybody want to read through it first?
Yeah, just 1 second.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, do you see opportunities here where having both puts us in a bind in terms of its determination?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I think the commission only wants to have a definition of upland review area of disturbance if the commission wants to assess the fee based on upland review area disturbance, because it's really hard to actually calculate the upland review area disturbance because we have the typical 100 feet upland review. However, the review area can be extended for different circumstances. So it starts off with any grubbing, filling, grading, paving, excavating, constructing, depositing, and removing material, clearing, cutting, alteration, damage to vegetation, living or dead, placement of decorative structures, electrical and mechanical equipment, including but not limited to fountains, aerators, or geothermal coils, or discharging of stormwater on land within 100 feet measured horizontally from the boundary of any wetland or watercourse is a regulated activity. And then it goes on to say, the agency may rule that any activity that alters the existing rate or quality of any stormwater discharge conveyed to a regulated area or upland review area is likely to impact or affect wetlands or watercourses and is a regulated activity. And the agency may extend the upland review area to the top of slope if steep slopes or erodible soils are present. And then the agency may rule that any activity located within such upland review area or in any other non-wetland or non-watercourse area is likely to affect wetlands or watercourses and is a regulated activity. So putting a number on the square footage isn't always straightforward. And so I think trying to base the fee off of the upland review area disturbance, well, it would be nice because it would be reflective of, you know, that disturbance, the commission would then have to define that area for each application, or they would have to compromise and come up with some sort of general assessment. And another problem with doing this is if the wetlands are located off-site, we can't make the applicant delineate off-site wetlands, so we don't know where the 100-foot upland review area is. So how do you assess it in that case?
This is Commissioner Boda. I mean, I would not be in favor of not H. I mean, you're starting to enumerate some of the issues. I think even that first phrase of the total area of disturbance within 100 feet of the wetlands or water courses, it starts to contradict, you know, that while that's a practice, that we're not beholden to that number. And there's too many instances, you know, when we think about some of the soils in town and some of the slopey areas that I think it just would end up inhibiting our ability to fairly and uniformly apply our regulations. And I think it would make it more difficult for applicants. And I think it would make it much more difficult for you in the office.
This is Commissioner Bassett. Let me also say that when we debated these two concepts, you know, it was not done because one generated, you know, more revenue for the agency than another. We think our fees are, you know, pretty much in line, etc. So this is more a concept issue than any kind of generation of fee issue. Is the general consensus on the commission in agreement with Jamie and Commissioner Boda's comments?
Yes.
Does anyone feel strongly that upland review area of disturbance is worth including in the regulations? Great.
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, did anyone have any concerns about total area of disturbance? I think one of the key things here is specifying means total area to be impacted by the proposed project. I have both permanent and temporary. I'm not sure if that's what the commission wants or if they want to specify permanent.
Permanent and temporary, because the temporary stuff is where so much, I'm sorry, this is Commissioner, but the temporary stuff is where we end up having a lot of problems, right? It's when they're doing construction. So that temporary stuff is like, yeah, that's an important area of disturbance.
Is Commissioner Bassett, is temporary in the model reg, Jamie?
I don't think there's a definition of total area of disturbance in the model reg. This was my stab at coming up with language.
Well, and can we do, I don't know that it's necessary to say the standard of the standard 100. Like it can just say outside the upland review area.
Okay. I think, yeah, all right, outside the upland review area. Okay.
This is Commissioner Bassett. Jamie, the statute does not specify the 100 foot, correct?
No, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So it's been established that inland wetland commissions can have upland review areas, and it's up to a commission to determine if they want to have an upland review area. If they want to have one, they have to put it in their regulations and they have to define it. There's no restriction as to how large of an upland review area a commission can have, but any activity regulated outside of a wetland or water course has to be related back to how it's impacting a wetland or water course. So it's not a setback. The Inland Wetland Commission cannot have a setback. It's an upland review area where the commission reviews activity within that area for how it will impact wetlands and water courses.
Thank you.
And so I just want to point out, I asked about the permanent or temporary, and this is something that we should probably discuss again when the commission has the public hearing, because when the commission adopts regulations, they're acting in a legislative capacity, and you need to explain on the record why you're making the changes that you're making. And it's helpful. It's helpful for understanding why the reg is being implemented, but it also puts it clear on the record that the commission has considered the changes that they're proposing and has a reason for why they're proposing them. So that will probably be a repeat question later, or I will put a little comment saying that it was discussed at this meeting.
This is Commissioner Basserman, and you have the recording. So if we were to put together, if you will, a stalking paper for the public hearing, we could have enumerated the comments that were made this evening. No.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. The commission could add the minutes if they wanted to from this meeting to the record for the public hearing or something like that. All right. Any other comments on 19.4G? Okay, hearing none. And the commission decided they did not want to keep H. So we'll take that out in the next revision. 19.5A is the deep fee. This is a requirement by the state for all applications. It's not required for violations. So I'm proposing that gets striked. And then I just added a reference for the state statute that requires that fee.
Just Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, I'm just curious, did the old model reg have violations in there?
I don't believe so. I'll double check, but I'm not sure why that language is in there, but I did double check the state statute, which is why I added the reference. So that way I wouldn't have to look it up again. Right. It does not apply to violations. We've never taken it in for violations. I'm not sure why that got put there. But I'll double check the model reg because that could have been why, but I don't think it belongs there. And I do have that language if the commission wants me to pull it up, but
no.
No, this Commissioner Papantonis, though, I mean, if there's a violation and someone has to take out an application, then they have to pay the deep fee anyway.
Correct.
Right?
If they take out an application, they would be paying the deep fee for the application.
So it's kind of unnecessary.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Oh, and the reason why there's no fee, like no quantity, is because that fee can change by the state statute. So rather than being potentially out of date, just referencing that section. And then we put the actual fee on our application form, which is much easier to amend. All right. All right, so we already went over B1, that's the de minimis minimal impact activity fee as determined by the agency or its duly authorized agent, which is $25, which would be in lieu of number 2, which is the total area of disturbance fee. So currently, the commission has 2 separate categories for total area of disturbance fees that are assessed. One is family and duplex, and the other one is commercial, other, and residential other than single family and duplex. There was a modification to the state statutes that multifamily housing cannot be assessed at a different rate than single family housing. So back in October, the commission discussed that and decided all residential applications at this time would be using the single family and duplex. So what the subcommittee did is they made 2 categories. One is residential uses. So that would be anything from single family to a duplex to a commercial, or not commercial, but a multifamily dwelling. And then commercial and other uses. That would be any commercial, industrial, utility, any other use that's not residential. The other big change that you'll see here is that currently the commission has ranges and has a set fee for those ranges. And then once you get over 40,000, it's a set rate per a certain amount. So I can pull up the application form. I also see that Commissioner Finaro has her hand raised.
Commissioner Finaro, I had a question about, is there a definition in here about multifamily and whether is like a condo considered commercial?
So Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, we did take out definition of multifamily. It did not address that. A multifamily condo would not be considered commercial because it's still, it's a residential use, it's multifamily. It can't be assessed at a different rate than single family. At least that's my interpretation of the regulation of the state statute. Doesn't mean you can't charge more for the activity. Obviously, a condo building is likely to have more total area of disturbance than a single family house. You just can't charge the single family house $2 per square foot and the condo $5 per square foot.
Thank you.
Jamie, this is Commissioner Bodo. Looking at the numbers, so under residential use, it goes 125, and then it goes to 16 and 14. And then for commercial use, up to 1,000 feet is $200. So it's cheaper, it's less expensive, much less expensive to make more disturbance. Am I reading that? Someone explain that to me.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Yeah, I've been struggling with this table and how to structure it. So obviously it does not work the way that it is. So
this is Commissioner Begman. Are you trying, I think what you're trying to say is up to 1,000 feet, that's what it costs.
Per 5
or
square feet.
For the first 1,000 feet, that's what it costs. Additional footage beyond, then you're getting charged at 16 for each 500. So yeah, it's getting cheaper. And then if you pass 5,000, you've already paid those other two amounts, right? And then when it goes over 5,000, you start adding on a smaller amount. I don't know why, but that's how I interpreted it.
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, that's generally correct, but it is fee per 500 square feet of disturbance. So 500 square feet residential would be 125 and 1,000 would be 250. And then for 1,500, it would be 266.
It's Commissioner Basserman. And Jamie, the fees are designed to recover what?
So the commission is allowed by state statute to set fees for applications to cover their costs. Back in 2016, when the commission did some revisions to the fees, the subcommittee that was formed at that time was looking to try and make applications reflective of the amount of time it took to review the application and do follow-up inspections and whatnot. And the subcommittee that was formed recently wanted to try and keep the fees in a similar alignment. So I'm not 100% sure that these numbers that we have here are the final best numbers. These numbers were kind of a first go at it. I do have a document that shows some examples and how we got to these numbers.
Can you share that?
Intent here was to, I'm sorry?
Can you share that at this point?
So Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent, when the numbers on that table were developed, it was based off of a handful of single family applications and a handful of commercial applications. What I did the other day was I kind of looked at it again and looked at also some general areas of disturbance. So here is 1,000 square feet of disturbance, 5,000 off and on through 500,000 square feet of disturbance. So with the fees that are currently in that table we were looking at, this is what the application fee would be currently under our current regs. And this is what the application fee would be based off of the new regulation. And here's the difference. So if it's in parentheses, that means that the fee is cheaper. And if it's not in parentheses, that means the application fee is going up. So upon closer review, I thought it might make more sense to, rather than have the 14 figure, have the 12 at the higher bracket to make it more consistent with what the current prices are and kind of keep the higher areas of disturbance from getting really out of place. Granted, with a residential, we don't frequently get applications that are that large, but now subdivision and multifamily would fall into that category. One thing that I would like to point out is that even though these higher fees are going up, they're not really, because they would have been in the commercial category previously. So I have down here what the commercial prices would be. So what would be calculated with our current prices at 10,200 would really, prior to the state statute change, have been calculated at 13,500. So I do think that this is a better fit to our current fees if the commission wants to go this route. I think one of the things we were looking to address is our fees currently have the same price from 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. So by doing this based off of 500-foot increments, it kind of theoretically gives some sort of incentive to reduce your amount of disturbance. Whereas otherwise, if you're at 5,050 square feet of disturbance and you see that you have up to 10,000 for the same price, then maybe you say, oh, I am going to add that patio or whatever else. I mean, I don't think that it's cost prohibitive, but it makes it more relative to what the actual area of disturbance is.
Jamie, Commissioner Bassman, these proposed rates compared to the previous table that you showed, do we have that comparison at all?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, do you mean this table right here?
Yeah.
Okay, so this first, so the residential uses fees, 125, 1645, 1614, sorry about that. That's this top table right here, 125, 16.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's what I used to come up with first. But upon closer review, I would actually probably, from a staff standpoint, with the directive of having the aim of trying to match our current prices, I'd probably recommend 12 instead of 14, because I think it's a better fit, particularly given what I was saying about the commercial fees.
Yeah, there's not much difference in the lower brackets, but in the higher brackets, I can see a better difference, a more tight comparison.
Yeah, and I think it's reasonable to give a bit of a break on some of the smaller areas, because so like this 5,000 square feet, that's kind of either an addition or an in-ground pool is usually what you're looking at. I think $378 is a reasonable fee for that. So I think the fact that some of these are getting a bit of a break, it's still going to be reflective of covering the cost, I think, to review.
And what's, Commissioner Bassman, I think what's important is that there is some basis that can be demonstrated on empirical results over time. If the issue comes up about how do we come up with the fees. Does anybody feel differently than the proposed category labeled 125, 16, 12? And the rate, I guess that would go, yeah, the rates that are with that.
Commissioner Boda, just thanks to the committee and thanks to Jamie for pulling all of those numbers together and spending the time on that.
Yep, favorite thing to do. All right, so I do also have a comparison for commercial, and I do also suggest a slight change for that one as well. Again, we had initially just taken a couple of projects, and I thought it'd be more rounded to add a couple of intermediate numbers to see how it did across the board. So again, this top table that we're looking at is the first column is what the price would be under our current regulations, and this second column would be the price under the numbers that I have in the draft regulations that we're reviewing. And then the third column is the difference. Again, if it's in parentheses, it's a reduction. Again, I think it makes sense to give a bit of a reduction on the smaller projects. They're usually the projects that are having less of an impact on a wetland. They're usually a little bit less ground disturbance, less erosion potential, and usually a little bit further away from a wetland overall. So I have two other options. I wasn't really sure how much the commission would want to change things. So the issue with this fee bracket is when you get over 40,000 in our current regs, essentially it's $12.50 per 500 square feet. So if you have a number higher than $12.50, you're essentially going to be increasing the fee when you get to the higher numbers. So 14, I tried that and it still seemed a little bit off to me. It seems like it gets really high on some of these larger applications that we have. And keep in mind, this is just the total area of disturbance fee. The commission also has a fee that is separate from this for direct wetland impact. And the commission also has a separate fee that they can apply if they deem that it's appropriate, which is to hire a peer review. And that's separate. It doesn't go into the town funds like regular applications do. It goes into a separate account. The commission hires a peer review team. They submit bills for the work they do. They get paid. Any remaining funds go back to the applicant. But I think it's important to consider the fact that when a peer review is hired, they're taking some of the load off of the staff to do the professional in-depth review of those particular things. And also that is an expense to the applicant and the review of the application. So the third option is just dropping it down to $13 because the commission just seemed to agree that $12 was appropriate for residential. And I'm gonna let people think about that for a minute while I take a sip of water.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, 500,000 square feet. Do we have a project that matched that size recently? Sorry.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, we have. Yes, we have had applications in those higher ranges. I was going to stop at 200,000 and then I looked at some of the applications we've had recently and realized they needed to go much higher.
Thank you.
And for perspective, we're not spending $24,727 to review any application, at least not in the wetland office. There might be peer review fees that would get it up to that, but that, like I said, that's a separate fee. So I don't know if the commission, particularly for maybe, I mean, you could do it for both, wants to add a fourth bracket to bring down some of these higher applications. The other thing about the applications that have a higher amount of disturbance is usually, again, because the commission bases their application fee on the total area of disturbance, usually a decent amount of that activity will be greater than 100 feet from the wetland and might not be as much of an impact to the wetlands and water courses. So it might be worth considering granting a reduction on the higher end, like above 200,000, to keep the fees a little bit more reasonable.
We just Commissioner Basser, we do have still the opportunity for an applicant to request a fee reduction, do we not?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, yes, you do. I'd be hesitant to keep that as that should only be used in unique circumstances and in circumstances that you can keep very defined and uniform. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where there's a question as to whether or not it's being applied arbitrarily. The commission has requested fee reductions in the past for activity where applications were like, say, 50% of the activities in the upland review area and 50% of it isn't. So they request a fee reduction for the activity that's not in the upland review area. I'm not familiar with an instance where the commission has granted a fee reduction for that purpose. I don't know if the commission wants to try and draft something to address that. I really don't know how you would go about doing that. I see Commissioner has her hand raised.
Yeah, Commissioner Finaro, I had the same question because I've seen meetings lately. Someone always asks for a waiver of the fee or a fee reduction. But my other question was like, can you cap how high these fees go so they don't go past a certain amount?
It's a good question.
This Commissioner Basserman, while you reflect on that one, let me ask this. Am I to understand then that we really did not look at, say, for instance, a 500,000 or 1 million square foot project and determine what the staff time was for that particular project? We took the projects that we had of the larger, say, variety and determine what the rate should be for those projects, as opposed to looking at actual staff time spent.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, to be honest, I relied upon the assessment that was done the last time the fees were revised and went with the goal of trying to keep numbers fairly consistent. And then also, as they were falling off slightly, trying to keep it maybe favoring some of the things that the commission has received fee reduction requests for and seems sympathetic to.
Okay, so it was kind of a math game designed to fit a pattern.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I don't know that the actual assessment of staff hours went up to these large project sizes.
Gotcha.
This is Commissioner Finaro. I was wondering, when they're making the fee schedules and updating it, do they look at other towns and how they do their fee schedules? Like, how is there any recommendations?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, if you look at some of the surrounding towns, our fees are quite a bit higher, generally speaking. Our fees are also significantly higher than planning and zoning fees. Planning and zoning fees are basically a set fee. They have small brackets. If it's over or under, it's price A or price B. So I certainly think that it wouldn't be out of place for the commission to consider reducing some of the fees. And there's definitely no significant pressure of any sort from the town to be making a certain revenue. I think that the commission has had a past concern with trying to make it fair so that the people that are using the resource are helping to pay for the resource to help, reduce the tax burden to people that may not be using the resource directly, which I do think is a good idea. But I don't know that it needs to be penny for penny, especially since sometimes you get an applicant, small project, they're very interested in the process. You end up spending a lot of time with them, which there's nothing wrong with. I love it when people want to be involved in the process. They want to learn and they want to make sure they're doing everything right. And then there's other times where there's large projects and it really doesn't necessarily take as much of our time. I think another thing to consider about some of these larger projects is oftentimes the commission requires sediment and erosion control reports to be submitted on a weekly basis. So when that happens, it does take a little bit of pressure off from town staff to go out there on quite as regular of a basis, as long as we are getting those reports, which if we're not is a separate issue. So as far as the monitoring and follow-up end, there's something built into the permit quite frequently to help with that. So
it would seem to me that, Commissioner Basserman, that the top two might be worth adjusting so that we don't spend an inordinate amount of time defending numbers that may be difficult to defend in terms of staff time and the recovery of that time via the fee that's assessed.
So Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, does that mean that you want us to consider adding another bracket? So like, let me jump back to the regulation revision. So right now we have one set price for each 500 square feet of disturbance up to 1,000, from 1,000 to 5,000, and then over 5,000. So we can make it 5,000 to X, and then we could have over X. Or I don't know. You could, I can't think of a reason why you couldn't put a max price on this specific fee. Obviously, the other fees would still need to be calculated and would be applicable as applicable. I don't know.
I'm okay with a cap. I guess, where's everybody else?
Commissioner Papantonis, I think we should add a category so that we haven't dropped down so many levels. Could, you know, the other numbers match the lower numbers better. And then they get out of skew as we get to the higher numbers. So maybe we should just add another level.
So maybe like over 200,000, make it a slightly smaller number so it aligns a little bit.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. I don't have the chart up. So if you could scroll up to the higher one, the middle one. Yeah. To do something like that, and then add after 200,000, maybe drop it a little bit more
to like 12 or 10 or something.
Well, the one below it is 13, right?
Yep.
So if you use 14 and then at some level drop it down to 13 over a certain number, over 500,000 or over 400,000, whatever.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So would the commission want to do that same thing for the residential in case a large residential development comes in? So that way it's kind of the same practice and we can keep it in one table and it won't be as confusing.
Can you, Commissioner Basserman, can you display that residential table again?
So it would really be like this higher number here that would change.
Right.
Okay, so does the commission want staff to kind of number crunch again with that information in mind to see what numbers might make sense and report back with some updated tables for consideration?
Where's everybody's head?
It's Commissioner Steinberg. I agree on a level in between the 150 and the 500. It's a fairly substantial jump.
So
or lower get to 13.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I didn't put in examples between 150 and 500,000 because I don't really have any that are that large for residential uses.
Okay.
Certainly, you know, it'd be any number in between, but I can fill in some extra lines. I can make the lines comparable to the commercial one just so that you can kind of just see the general direction, which will probably also help us in the assessment of what number fits best.
this is Commissioner Basser. That's probably a good idea, JB, given the fact that we still have the bond stuff to review. So we're going to be doing that at another meeting. We might as well review the revised rates at the next meeting as well.
Okay. All right, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So the next section is the basically is condensed now into the table we were just reviewing. That was the commercial, multifamily, and subdivision and other residential uses fee. So I went back and I double checked my comments in here to the comments from the subcommittee discussion, and I realized that I missed a couple. So I'm going to jump over to the subcommittee thing real quick. On Schedule A, I had added a comment. So this Schedule A is the fee that is assessed based on direct wetland impact. So if you're directly impacting 50 square feet of wetlands, your fee would be $500. If you're directly impacting 1,000 square feet, it would be $2,500. And this would be assessed in addition to the deep fee and to the total area of disturbance fee. So the thought is up to 50 square feet is kind of a small area. I don't know if the commission wants to consider making a larger bracket, like up to 250 or up to 200, or if they just want to leave it alone, no reason to change it. Or we could do another bracket like we were proposing for the total area of disturbance, where it's up to 1,000 is X amount per 500 square feet, 1,000 to 5,000, yada, yada, yada. And then the other thing that's always kind of been a pet peeve for me is $1 per each 1 square foot over 1,000. It's not very realistic, in my opinion, that an applicant is going to have an estimate right down to 1 square foot. So I don't know if it might make sense to kind of round that up a little bit, or if the commission wants to just leave it as is. It could be the same assessment, and you could just do $10 per 10 square feet, or $50 per 50 square feet or something like that, if you didn't want to change the amount. But I don't know.
Commissioner Basserman, what is the fee today for up to 50 feet of Schedule A?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So these numbers are not changed. These are the numbers that are there today. So what I'm suggesting the commission maybe consider either restructuring it like we did for the total area of disturbance, or increasing the first bracket to be a larger area and increasing the area for the last bracket as well. I think the one that bothers me more is the last bracket, but I mean, at the same time, somebody's going to give you an estimate. It's going to be rounded. It is what it is. Like, I don't know that it really matters.
So it might this is Commissioner Basserman. I might understand that if somebody wants to put a shed in or a pool, we're talking about a $500 fee.
That's only if they're putting the shed or the pool in the wetland.
Right.
Okay.
But they would also still be looking at the total area of disturbance fee. So it'd be the total area of disturbance fee for 500 square feet or whatever square feet, and then also the Schedule A.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not hearing a lot of comments that this is bothering other people or that they're concerned about it. So I think we'll move on. So then the next section is the remediation and or enhancement activities proposed within wetlands, which are not required per section 7.9 or as a result of a violation. So this is the one place where the commission has had a very consistent past practice of waiving the application fee. So having a fee specifically for it when they generally waive the application fee doesn't really make sense. So this was implemented back in 2017, and I don't know that it's been used. So recently there was the Rockland Park application that would have fallen under this category, and the commission waived it down to the $60 deep fee. Since the commission doesn't really use it, I'm recommending that we just get rid of it. Because there's confusion where people say, oh, well, I'm improving the wetland area, so this fee applies instead of this fee being the Schedule A fee, or it applies in addition to the Schedule A fee. So I think just getting rid of it simplifies everything.
Commissioner Basserman, again, was this a model reg inclusion, or
no?
Was this done wrong?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think this was the commission's way of trying to create a lower fee schedule for people that wanted to do a positive project. But I think generally the commission has instead waived the fee requirement, but required the information up front that the applicant has considered what's required with doing the project, what's entailed with it, the fact that it's probably not going to be a 1 year and done project. And once they're comfortable with that, then they reduce the fee and hope that the positive project is successful.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so not hearing any concerns, we'll leave that as is.
This is Commissioner Bergman, just one question. The idea of leaving it up to people to know that they can ask for a fee reduction. We talked about it earlier, and we kind of went away from that idea by putting in those extra steps or reducing the fee for really big, the additional fee when you already have gotten a huge amount, well, a lot. So how do we make it so that the same thing applies for people who are doing something like this, so they don't, it isn't on the burden isn't on them to know that they could have the fee reduction?
Jamie Frederick, inland wetland agent. So I think that's part of what the intent was. But again, the commission usually just waives it down to the deep fee. There is a section that we'll be getting to shortly that's about reducing the fee. And it specifically states like if the project has like our environmental benefit. And whenever I see a project like this, or not like this, a conservation project that I think the commission would apply that practice to, I inform the applicant, and oftentimes I'll tell them, just submit the $60 deep fee for now. The commission will assess what your fee is, and we'll go from there. So another option is the commission could just add a conservation project fee, kind of like the de minimis fee. So that way it is spelled out and they're put on notice, and just say as determined by the agency.
Anybody feel strongly one way or the other?
This is Commissioner Boda. Do you know of other towns that have like conservation project as a fee item?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I do not. And I think it also gets kind of messy because on these, the commission is also considering whether they're as of right. It's often a fine balance because conservation projects that meet certain criteria are as of right. So I think it could be confusing.
Yeah, I feel like it would add a layer of like having to make funny decisions, and like, I don't know if this is extreme, but I just think about some mitigation work that maybe somebody has to do at some point in response to a violation or whatever. And it's like, well, this is the fee for this or whatever goes underneath this. And it's like that,
yeah.
That was not, I just see it getting kind of twisted around in a weird way.
That's been one of the problems we've had with the language that's in here already. So
yeah, and we're like, wait, why is this in here? What was the intent? And you kind of lose that when you go to apply it because all you have is the language. So seems maybe better to just skip it and use the tools we have.
the commission has a clear defined past practice, so I don't think that there's a concern with inconsistency. The biggest concern is putting the applicant on notice, but like I said, a lot of times they'll come in and talk to me about their project before submitting the application in those kind of instances, and I clue them into what the past practice is. So I don't think we have to worry about it too much. So the next change is subdivision, re-subdivision referral per section or Connecticut General Statute section 8-26E without regulated activity or cause to be conducted regulated activity. I don't know if we want to leave it at $50 or change it to $0, as it would be kind of more of a jurisdictional ruling request. So in my opinion, this should only apply when a subdivision with wetlands on it is occurring that is not causing regulated activity to be conducted. So if the subdivision is subdividing it for 2 houses and there's no houses built on the property, then that would be a subdivision with regulated activity to occur. So that would, I would think, be a regulated activity application. If there's already 2 houses on the property and they're subdividing it so they're on their own property and there's no activity proposed, the zoning or the planning regulations require that inland wetlands submit a report that they have reviewed the subdivision if there's wetlands on the property. So even though there's no regulated activity, the Planning Commission requires a report. So this basically would be providing that referral to planning, but there's no regulated activity to review. So basically it would just be the commission confirming that there's no activity occurring as this part of the subdivision that would need to be reviewed by the commission. If the commission is reviewing it and conditioning it because of certain activities, then it should be reviewed as a subdivision with regulated activity. And then the regulated activity fee schedule would apply. I don't know if the commission, I just think it needs to be clear. If you're putting it under applications that do not involve regulated activities, the commission has to be very careful about conditioning anything that they're approving under that kind of permit based on activity. So again, it's kind of more of a jurisdictional ruling request. It's a documentation that they can provide to planning stating that Inland Wetlands has reviewed the subdivision and that there are no concerns regarding any sort of regulated activity that would be associated with the subdivision.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I don't have any negative comment, but I do want to point out a typo. You need the section symbol by Connecticut General Statutes or SEC period, right? One or the other.
Okay.
You know what I mean, right? The 2 S's together. Okay.
Next up.
All right, so the next one was just jurisdictional ruling, adding request. Extra assessments. So this is also a change that is per state statute. So any unused portion of the funds will be returned no late. So this is extra assessments. This is basically the fee that allows the commission to hire a peer review. Any unused portion of the fees will be returned no later than 45 days after the completion of technical review. I don't know if this last sentence I added is okay or not. I can check with town council. Receipt of the final bill for the technical review shall be deemed the completion of the technical review. I don't know if that's okay, or if it should really be when the final report is received. I was just trying to make it a clear-cut date that would be easy for us to act upon, but
Commissioner Papantonis, sometimes you get the report, but you don't get the bill right away. So I think you're better off giving that lead time.
Yeah, alternatively, putting the peer review on notice that they have that amount of time before they have to get the bill to us so we can pay the applicant back.
This is Commissioner Bassett, but I'm okay with that being decided between yourself and town council.
Okay.
F.
Okay, so F, keep does not align with state guidance provided at conferences. So multiple times, Darcy Winther from DEEP has indicated that she does not like it when commissions do this because a cease and correct order in an application are two different processes. And if a cease and correct order is issued, then it should be resolved through the cease and correct order. An application is a permit requesting permission to do something, and a cease and correct order is an order that you must do something. I don't think we've used this fee. I don't know if the commission wants to keep it. It could, I mean, it doesn't necessarily hurt to continue to be there, but I would probably advise that if a cease and correct order is issued, the commission should strongly consider following through on the cease and correct order side of things. I think the reason why this fee was added is because the commission is concerned in the past with if you do activity without a permit and then you're issued a cease and correct order, then you don't have to pay the permit application fee. We do have a fine ordinance, and I don't know if a municipality that charges fees for violations, but it's been hinted to me that we probably could based on the state statute language. I don't know that Brantford wants to be the first town to go out on a limb with that.
So this is Commissioner Boda. I agree that we shouldn't be dealing with something that would come out of a cease and correct order with an application. I would never advocate for that because of those trainings that we've had. And our regs are so long and there's so much text in them that anytime we can eliminate a little paragraph, I think we ought to.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Bassman. I agree. The other thing is this doesn't give us any option. It says will. It doesn't say maybe, it says it will be assessed.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent also says requirement of a cease and correct order. So yeah, if you issue a notice of violation, it doesn't apply. I think it doesn't add anything unless anybody wants to keep it. I'll propose that it gets removed in the next revision. All right, so then the last, I think this is the last section in the fees. 19.7 waiver. I don't know if the commission wants to leave it open to either the agency or the duly authorized agent. If so, I think it needs to be revised in the last sentence. Yeah, the agency shall state upon the record the basis for all actions under this subsection. I think that would need to be revised to say agency and or duly authorized agent. So that's that part of it. And then the other part is, so we have the two reasons that the commission's always had: the activity applied for would clearly result in a substantial public benefit to the environment or public health and safety. And the application fee is clearly excessive in relation to the cost to the town for reviewing and processing the application. The 2006 model reg has a third reason, which is the applicant has shown good cause. I think this kind of speaks to what Commissioner Boda was saying earlier, that you can't foresee every circumstance. I think the fact the model reg has it indicates that it's not too ambiguous, too open-ended. And I think it gives the commission a little bit of wiggle room in some of the instances where the commission has considered giving a fee reduction, but it hasn't really necessarily fit A or B. So I would suggest the commission consider adding that language.
This is Commissioner Boda. I think we should leave C. I like the addition of C because it speaks to that issue of, you know, we get things we can't predict. And then, you know, looking at the inclusion of the duly authorized agent, and I see, or, because I don't want to remove it, because I think that the ability to waive, the way that I read it is in response to, okay, so say we have an applicant and we say that this is going to go to agent approval. It looks like at that point, then you can do that as part of the agent approval. So I wonder, when you say like adjust throughout the section, do you mean 19.7 inclusive of, or are you talking about a greater?
Yeah, no, I mean 19.7, because it goes on to state the agency should consider, the agency may waive if the agency determines, and then
yeah, I mean,
shall state.
Because you see the way that it's in the clause, it's like the applicant may petition the agency. Yeah, or the duly authorized agent in the case of an administrative approval. Yeah, I mean, I think that it makes sense to leave it, because if we do an that's what that's for, is if we do an administrative approval. Does that make sense to folks besides me?
This is Commissioner
Apparently it doesn't
Papantonis.
have to be 9 o'clock for my brain to get fuzzy on this section.
Jamie, I have a question. Is that the language in the model reg? The applicant has shown good cause, not the agency finds good cause based on the circumstances, or?
Nope, it's simply the applicant has shown good cause.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Begman, I agree to leave it in there for that reason. That doesn't have to, when it says agency, it means it has to come before the commission, correct?
Yes, agency means the commission.
Right, so I think we should leave it in there. So it could be, if it's just going to be authorized by staff, this allows that. Yeah.
Were you asking whether, because throughout the sentence it says just the agency to add or duly authorized to, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that was the other part of my question.
Oh.
Does the rest of the sentences, do the rest of the sentences in 19.7 that where they reference agency have to say agency, or in the case of, and I think it's, the intent is clear, so I don't know. I mean, that'd be a lot of repeating of or duly authorized agent if it's changed.
This Commissioner Papantonis, I'm not sure that we need to, because you come before the commission with, asking for permission for stuff like this all the time, for agent approval. if once we give it, it's covered by the section. I don't know that we need to have it, or do we authorize wage agent like 5 times in this one sentence?
Yeah.
It's kind of implied.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That wraps up fees. Is the temperature of the group to go back to the beginning? Or are we comfortable in having worked for an hour and 45 minutes here, gotten through fees, which I think is a record for this commission? What's the temperature here?
I want 2 seconds to go get a drink of water.
That sounds like you're continuing.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that's definitely the most substantial revision section. So congratulations, everyone.
I went to get a glass of water.
Me and him back.
Oh, okay. That was really quick. I was like, everybody's here. What's happening?
All right. Does that mean we're ready to continue?
Yeah, can I just, sorry, this is Commissioner Barr. Can I just ask a question? Because I thought I was going to have a second because you went and got some water, but there are 2 commissioners here that I've now seen in a couple of meetings. I think I wasn't at the first meeting that you came to. Can we just say hello for a minute? And if you don't mind just introducing yourself, because that would just be nice. And we're not on TV, so that's helpful.
We will be though.
Well,
we broadcasted.
Okay. Just a hello and like, what is that okay? Can we do that?
Commissioner Finaro, why don't you take the seat for the moment?
Sure. Hi, I'm Melissa Finaro. I started on the commission. I don't know what else. I'm a librarian at the medical library at Yale. That's my full-time job, and I also went to have a master's in horticulture and a background in agriculture. So this is definitely something of interest of mine. So I'm definitely learning a lot, but just look forward to learning more and just asking questions. So thank you for including me, and great to meet everyone.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Yeah, this is Mark Steinberg, and I recently joined, and I have been a Brantford resident for almost 40 years now, and was recently requested through some friends that I might consider the inland wetlands. Did a little research and thought it was a worthy endeavor to be part of the town and help out wherever possible, and I'm happy to do so.
Great. Welcome to town government.
Yeah, thanks. Got about a half hour before I fall asleep, so let's go.
Is it everything you dreamed about?
Everything. When I got the first package and it was 24 inches high, I was very excited.
I felt so bad about that.
I called the person that recommended me to do this and said, what did you get me?
I think the first meeting went to 11, yes.
Yeah, you guys started on a rough one.
Yeah.
Thank you for your spirit of service. Jamie, let's go.
All right, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I'm going to suggest that we finish going through the end and then restart at the beginning. There's only one more thing. Section 21 of the regulations, effective date. These regulations, including the inland wetlands and watercourses map, application forms, fee schedule, and amendments thereto, shall become effective upon filing in the office of the town clerk and publication of a notice of such action in the newspaper having general circulation in the town of Brantford. The model reg does not include application forms. I would suggest the commission consider removing that language. And if you want, I can follow up with town council to see if the commission should be putting the process that they do use anywhere else in the regulations, or if it's okay to have that be a standard practice that's not necessarily spelled out in the regulations.
This is Commissioner Basserman. If we were to change, if we take out the language and we were to change the application form, can we do that without, public hearing, et cetera, et cetera?
You mean, would the commission be able to adopt a new application form without a public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, that would be the intent behind removing it. That, and also so that the commission wouldn't have to file it in the town clerk's office and clutter up the town clerk's files.
In the spirit of flexibility, I think it's a good change.
I agree.
Commissioner Steinberg, I agree.
Commissioner Papantonis, I agree.
All right, so jumping to the beginning. So for those of you that were looking at the summary of changes, you may have been a little bit confused by the weird font selection choices. I wasn't entirely done with everything by the time I was looking to get everything out. So the first one is revisions. The Brantford Inland Wetland Commission was created back in 1974. I don't know when the first regulations were adopted. I can't find a clear record of it. I guess what my suggestion would be is for the commission to consider changing adopted June 14th, 1990, which isn't wrong, but maybe saying approved June 14th, 1990. I think it just puts slightly less suggestion on the fact that June 14th, 1990 might have been when the regulations were first implemented.
Commissioner Basser, Jamie, who would have approved it?
The commission would have approved the regulations.
Is there documentation of that?
Of the 1990 approval, yes. Of the original adoptions, some.
No, just the original, 1990.
I've tried looking in our files. I've tried looking in the town clerk's files. I'm sure it's somewhere, but it's not readily available.
Yeah, I'm okay with approved if there's a record of who did it and all of
that. Okay. Then we just have the updating of commission members and staff members. Section 2 is per commission comment, adding a definition for agent. And that just references duly authorized agents, since most people are probably not commonly familiar with the fact that we use the term duly authorized agent in lieu of agent.
Commissioner Basserman, Jamie, if on someday an alternate is named, can we not include him or her in this list until we have a public hearing, or can we just update the list, or we don't do that with the regulations?
Technically, no, that cannot be changed once it's adopted. So the options are either have an outdated list as soon as it gets modified, or there's no reason why the members have to be on the regulations. You could take them off. Same with staff. But our past practice has just been that it sits and it gets updated every time the regs get updated.
I think, I mean, it doesn't preclude us from filling those vacancies. It's just the names aren't there. So I think it's fine.
When you give me, just for clarity, fine means what? Showing alternative, but then a bunch of blanks?
Yeah.
Where are you?
On the page that the commissioners.
What did you ask? Sorry.
Under alternates, what is the suggestion?
Oh, we could leave it blank.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So they would be
blank rather than vacant.
Right.
Unless, of course, we get somebody before the end of this process.
Although showing, I guess, 3 vacants gives the public the knowledge of how many, what the commission is supposedly staffed for.
I think that's a valid point. I mean,
yeah. Okay, so leave as vacant.
Let's leave it vacant.
This is Commissioner Finaro. Is this also listed on the website, like somewhere else?
Yes, Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Commissioners are listed on the website, and that is updated on a regular basis and should be up to date. This list doesn't really mean anything other than who the members were at the time that the regulations were adopted. So the next one is compensation. Again, the commission has talked about this previously. The proposal is to remove preservation from the definition, as preservation is not really compensation.
Agreed. Commissioner Boda.
Next one, probably a little bit of discussion on. I did notice that there was one thing that should be modified on this. So one of the things that has kind of been complicated in the past is our use of first flush and first inch. Recommend the commission consider changing it to water quality volume. That's the standard that the industry uses. It's what everyone calculates to. It's what's in the stormwater quality manual. So I changed it in the first sentence, but I realized in the second sentence, it still said, which I typed in, says where retention of the first inch is not feasible. It should be where retention of the water quality volume is not feasible and where prudent secondary treatment practices shall be used to treat the water quality volume.
And the date of the stormwater quality is still 2004?
Correct. Number one, okay, so one without the parentheses after the end of it. I'm not sure if the commission wants to do that. In the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection of impervious areas to the stormwater system, at least 50% of the water quality volume shall be treated by retention and infiltration on site unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. The reason why I proposed that is because part of the reason I was looking at this section is the town is looking to meet their MS4 permit requirements. So that language kind of echoes the MS4 requirement. Basically, the thought process is if the site's already developed, it's harder to accommodate the stormwater treatment, and it would still be an improvement over the existing condition. I don't know that it's necessary, because if the commission wanted to stick with the general language of requiring the water quality volume, the full water quality volume, it states or demonstrate unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. So you could just still have that done on a case-by-case basis. Number two, I do think is a good idea for the commission to consider in particular. I don't know that it needs to be the language provided. This requirement shall be waived for projects with less than 1,000 square feet of disturbance and for projects that have been determined to be de minimis by the agency or its duly authorized agent. So I definitely think it should apply to projects that have been determined to be de minimis. I have to admit though, that 1,000 square feet number is a placeholder. I don't know.
Well, maybe it's may instead of shall. I would avoid a shall.
I think it should be if it's determined to be de minimis.
Well, but we've grouped. You've got 1,000 square feet. You have a number,
right?
Which is somewhat arbitrary. Which is arbitrary, right?
It is.
And so, I think I would say that it would be better as a may. We can have. I don't know. I think it would be good practice to do that. I would really hesitate to have any requirement as a shall be waived without understanding the nuances of the particular application. I can't imagine a de minimis activity where we wouldn't do that.
But allows
maybe 1,000 square foot one, maybe, or a 900 square foot one, and be like,
yeah.
Why did we do that? We've locked ourselves in with a shell.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, do we have any feel for changing from 1 inch to the stormwater quality manual definition, what that means for the applicant in terms of his design?
So generally, the applicant is designing for the water quality volume, and the water quality volume is slightly less than 1 inch. So if you look at number 3, that defines what the water quality volume is. So that way, there's no it's clear to the applicant, clear to the commission. It's always the same. And this is the standard formula that they use. This is the formula in the stormwater quality manual. So it's 1 inch, and then R is the volumetric runoff coefficient, and A is site area in acres divided by 12 because it's acre feet. So basically, it takes the runoff coefficient, takes the anticipated runoff from the first inch based on the surfaces on the site. And that's the water quality volume that they're treating for. I think it's a reasonable adjustment. It's not a significant change, and it's based on kind of what the industry standard is.
And this is Commissioner Boda. I wonder also at the front end of that, where it says treatment of the water quality volume is to be by retention and infiltration on site, unless, like, what if we change that to no less than the water quality volume? And therefore, like, that's a minimum. It's not the expectation at all times for everything. It's a minimum expectation.
I might suggest maybe treatment of at least the.
Yes, at least no less, but whichever.
Because I think, because otherwise you're saying if no less, and then you go on to say, or demonstrate why it is not prudent, feasible or prudent.
Yeah, at least works. The same.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. We have to be careful how we change that, because section 1 talks about whether when retention of the first inch is not feasible and or prudent. So if we're asking, if we then say at least the first inch, or there may be an inconsistency there.
And Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I mean, it's consistent with the language that we have right now, in the sense that the first inch is what's required now. And just because that's what the requirement is, we have had applications where they do retain more than the first inch. So I don't think that it's prohibitive, and I don't think it necessarily, the start of the section is BMP. So applicants know that as much as they can achieve these things, it's going to make their application a little bit stronger and less concerning regarding impacts to wetlands and watercourses. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it.
Commissioner Basserman, if we adopt the language that Commissioner Boda has suggested, for an applicant that came in and designed just to the stormwater quality calculation that is listed under 3, in our review, if we determine that we would like a higher amount retained, is the language allow us to do that?
So there is language in section 7.8, I believe, that requires information regarding volume, the volume of water leaving site pre and post. So I would say yes, but not necessarily from a water quality volume standpoint.
Oh, okay.
But by retaining it, you're going to be providing some level of water quality. So
Yeah, there were not a lot of changes in 7 and 8. Okay.
So does the commission have any additional questions or concerns? Is the commission okay with I guess 76A11? Do they want additional information on that?
But I thought you were talking about changing 111.
Okay, so maybe I misunderstood Commissioner Boda's comment. Were we changing 1 or 1-1?
7.6A1.
Okay. And then in the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection to impervious areas to stormwater system.
No, the first one,
right?
Not the second one. Treatment of
at least the first, or
yes,
at least the water quality.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was just rereading 1-1 to see if that also, but it does say at least 50% of the water quality volume.
So how does 1-1 read?
In the case of redevelopment of a site with 40% or more direct connection of impervious areas to the stormwater system, at least 50% of the water quality volume shall be treated by retention and infiltration on site, unless it is demonstrated why it is not feasible or prudent to do so. So the follow-up comment I would have on that I realized after I added this language is that the commission may want to define redevelopment. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
Maybe let's put a question mark on it and try to do these 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. And maybe then come back to the
All right, so come back to 7.6.
Next meeting.
So, and then the 1.2 to may instead of shall.
Right. This requirement may be waived for projects with less than 1,000 square feet of disturbance and for projects that have been determined to be de minimis.
Now, this is Commissioner Boda again. I've heard that the stormwater quality manual is in revision. I suppose that would mean that when it does come out that we would need to revisit these. We wouldn't have a mechanism to then, never mind. I've answered my own question. We'd have to go in and do another revision.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. I would say it would depend on what they modify, because it does say 2004 Stormwater Quality Manual as amended. However, if they change things that would be reflective to our specific requirements, then obviously we would have to come back and address that. All right. Any specific things the commission wants follow up on for the review next time, or just tabling it for review later?
Well, I think there's been some comments. Why don't you come up also with a proposed definition, excuse me, of redevelopment?
Okay. All right, the next one's deleting an extra space, so I won't stop on that. Another one is just changing section 2.1 SS to 2.1. Generally, that's our definitions, and that way we don't have to worry about adjusting it anytime we add or remove a word. 7.8 D1. This is our calculations. Adding a reference for what should be used. So the Stormwater Quality Manual, I believe, shows a table from like 56 or something like that. So this is just adding kind of what the current standard is, which is the NOAA Atlas 14 data, specifying as amended so that if it gets amended, we don't have to update the regs, and then also adding or comparable data source as approved by the agency in case NOAA Atlas 14 data becomes no longer the standard. This is oftentimes the standard that the commission requests applicants use. Sometimes they don't do it up front, so I think putting it in the regs is helpful. And then 7.10, honestly, I'm not sure if we can take a look at it and the commission can decide if they want to table it or if they want to discuss it.
That looks like a heavy one.
That's a lot of red.
So I
think we've made some good progress today. I think we've accomplished a lot in the 2 hours that we had in front of us. There's some work to be done, not only in the bond area, but in some cleanup of language, et cetera, that we've reviewed that falls on staff. I'd say at this point, it's a good opportunity to break and enjoy the rest of the evening. Anybody disagree?
No disagreement.
Okay. Thank you all for reserving the time and effort for this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.
We need a motion to, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Please
Commissioner
do.
Bennett, 1 second.
There you go. Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
thank you,
night.
everyone.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.